What's doing, everybody? Welcome to First Class Fatherhood. I'm Alec, and before I hit you with today's interview, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the link in the description so you can listen to all of the interviews I've done with so many tremendous dads, including Dana White, Deion Sanders, Tony Hawk, and so many others. Now let's get going with today's interview. Joining me now, First Class Father, Joost Janssen. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, Alec. I'm really looking forward to this, man.
All right, let's start right here. How many kids do you have and how old are they?
I have two boys. They're 13 and 14.
Very cool. What type of sports or activities are they into?
Interesting. So when they were 3 or 4 years old, I'm really focusing on individual sports. So we started them off on motocross and BMX. I wanted to do something where there's a fear and a skill factor. They're now currently, since then they've gone to cross country, swimming. They're in the junior lifeguard program, and this year they're starting volleyball. So it's their first team sport. I'm not big on team sports when they're young because they tend to hide. When you do BMX and motocross, there ain't nowhere to hide. You gotta face your fear, head on.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome. I don't get too many of those when I ask that question, so that's pretty unique. If you could, Joost, here, please just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, so I joined the SEAL teams back in '95. I did just under 13 years in the SEAL teams. And I tried to be a civilian for about a year, and I just hated myself. So I went and joined the agency in one of their programs and special operations as well. So I did 14 deployments with them. So between the SEALs and CIA, I've done 18 deployments or trips ranging from 2 months all the way to 9 months during the last 22 years. So it's unique. I'm gone a lot from the kids' lives. But especially with the CIA job, I have also long gaps, as much as 2 months between deployments, where my time is mine, and I get to spend a lot of quality time with them.
Yeah, that's awesome, and thank you for your service. Before I forget to say that, and so then, about how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Yeah, so let me actually do the math. So my first boy was born in 2006, 14 years ago. And so that puts me in my low, just turned 31, 32, or that range. And I always wanted kids, but I was kind of one of those people that I could take it or leave it. But as soon as my first one was born, I knew I was meant to be a father, and it's been exciting ever since.
Yeah, very well said. And what was it like for you then now to transition out? What was the genesis of you getting involved with your movie career that you do now too, where you help and assist, with as far as with stunts and stuff like that with the films?
Yeah, back in 2007, when I was still active duty, I was an instructor for the SEAL program, and they were looking for some active duty guys to kind of work on the first Transformers with Michael Bay. So I jumped on that opportunity, and from then on, I started working with Harry Humphreys and his wife, Catherine, and I've been doing consulting for them on various movies, and then also kind of branched out on my own. I've been doing a little bit of stunts and acting on top of it. So it's been a it's a difficult career to get into, especially if you're counting on it for income, because I can go 6 to 9 months without a job. But it's very satisfying too, because you get to actually be part of creating something where not many jobs are like that. So you get a product at the end you can be proud of, which I really like.
Yeah, well said. And I would think it makes a big difference to have somebody that's seasoned and knows what they're doing to give a little bit more authenticity to the product that they're trying to put out there, especially when it comes to shooting and all the scenes like that. Do your kids watch the movies that you're in and that you do, or what do they think about what you're into? Is it cool for them, or is it, or are they over that?
Yeah, you know what? To answer the first part of it too is the population, especially Americans, they have a good eye for authenticity. So when the magazine never runs out on a movie, they know it's fake. So they really appreciate you trying to make things as realistic without giving away any secrets, of course, at the same time. But my kids are probably the hardest people in the world to impress. But no, they love it. I remember when the movie 13 Hours came out, my youngest son at the time, he actually quoted back to me every line I had in the movie and quoted them back to me afterwards. So I was worried, are you going to see me at all in this thing or not? But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I had Max Martini here on the podcast from the 13 Hours, and who I also had who played Tig in that movie. I had him on as well. Dominic.
Dominic. Yeah.
I was able to have him on. And switching it back here to you now as a father, obviously, what you do has required you to be very disciplined throughout your career. But what type of disciplinarian have you been as a father? And is it different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
It's very different. So what I tend to do is, first of all, I look at how I was raised, and I had generally a pretty good childhood, and overall more good than bad. But I analyze it and I look at what my parents did right, in my opinion, and what they did wrong. So I adjust it for there. For example, like spanking was a big deal, but for us, it turned into a joke. When we were 13, 14, 15 years old, my brother and I would have a competition to see how many paddles we could break in a year. And my mom would have to buy 3 new paddles at the grocery store every week, because if you clench your ass just perfect, you can actually crack the paddle when it's hit. So it turned into a big joke, and I never really wanted to get there. So I still remember my oldest boy, when he was like 2 years old, he kept getting into the dog's food. So I gave him a little spanking on the butt. And then he'd cry, and then he'd go back again. It took 13 times to break his will. But finally, it happened. And I don't think I've spanked him ever since then. There's no real need to. So there's a time and a place for it. So the way I do discipline is, like, I learned a lot from being an instructor in the SEAL program. Instructors will never yell. It's not like Marine Corps boot camp or anything like that. So what I do is instead of getting emotional or yelling at my kids or anything like that, I'll just say drop. And what that means, similar to a buzz instructor, when they say drop, you go in the push-up position. They have to bear crawl over to me and hold that push-up position while we have a discussion about what they did wrong. And they're suffering a little bit that whole time, but you have a captive audience. And then when they're done, they have to knock out 10 push-ups, say hoo-yah, and then wait for me to say recover, and then they can stand up and carry on. So when I started doing that, it just changed the whole dynamic. I make it a little bit fun for them too at the same time. So they know I'm not really mad at them. They just realize there's a consequence to screwing up. And the same with like the room inspections. We're in first phase of BUDS. You'd have to stand by your room once a week. And, my kids too, I make them do that once a week. And you have to be there and say Lance and Luke standing by and ready for room inspection. And you'd think that'd be easy to remember, but even real BUDS students will screw that up. So they screw it up, then they have to come back an hour later and try again. And I kind of go in there and kind of make it fun. I throw stuff around, and then three infractions and you fail, and you got to clean your room again. So I kind of make it fun. I let them pass most of the time. And but doing that makes discipline not like a bad thing, because the biggest thing is I don't want to build resentment in my kids at all.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe there should be some kind of like BUDS course for parents to go through, in the beginning to see how we can get all that done. I would love to implement that into my kids, because right now I got one, that room is a mess, and we're working on it pretty big right now. But what about as far as the technology, Joost? Because you're in the same situation. Me, my oldest is 14. My second one is about to be 13. So I'm right there with you. And my oldest just got his phone this year for the 8th grade. And, it's challenging for us because all the kids in his class have it. They have access now. One of the things that I fear the most with it is the pornography that's on there, the access that they have to it. How do you kind of handle or monitor all that technology and stuff like that with your boys?
We kind of package it all together. So like as far as even with money and allowance and technology and working out, all gets packaged together. So for them, if they do a good job on their workout, and we just finished doing a CrossFit workout this morning, so we work out CrossFit 3 times a week, we run twice a week, we swim once a week, and then we mountain bike. And if they do a good job, they get 1 hour and 1 hour of free time, which means electronics. If they get a personal record, because we record everything, then they get 5 hours. So we reward them based on how much effort they put into the fitness. And it's still, we kind of make it fun. And then we have these little magnets where they keep track of how many hours they use. And then and we just let them do their thing. If they want to use 5 hours one day or on the weekend or something and just sit there and watch TV or play on their iPad, they earned it, but they're definitely not going to get that time as some kind of right or anything like that. It's a privilege that they have to earn. I'm not overly worried about, predators on the internet or anything like that, overly so. Like, we have a kind of open policy. Whenever I want to grab the electronic device from my kid, they know I can do that, and I can kind of look. So I keep a little bit of tabs on. But my kids they're 13 and 14, but they still have their innocence. You know, they're just kind of entering puberty, but they're not into girls yet or anything. So we talk a lot about that kind of stuff, and I keep eyes on them, but they're still pretty innocent. They still love cartoons, and they like simple games and things like that. So as they get older, I'll be paying a lot more attention into monitoring that as well. So
yeah, real cool. Yeah, myself as well. And since it's a big part of what you do, and one of the things I'm curious about, because I know a lot of the SEALs that I've interviewed, some stand differently, where it's you know, they're not so for all the material that's available now about the SEAL team. So many people have their books out. There's so many different shows dedicated to the SEALs now. I think it's, as a civilian, I love it. I think it's great that we have access to follow you guys on social media, to read your books and stuff like that. How do you feel about how the SEALs are being presented now in like mainstream media, as far as like shows like SEAL Team, the show 6 that was on the History Channel? Do you feel like these things are giving an accurate and well portrayal of what the SEAL teams are all about?
Well, I'll tell you what, without the SEALs kind of embracing the identity in Hollywood and everything, I probably would never be a SEAL either. Because, yeah, I was in Canada when the movie with Charlie Sheen came out, Navy SEALs. I think it was like 1990 or 89 or something like that, too. Not a really accurate portrayal, but it just, the awareness that there was a unit out there, it just led me to more research. Now, the show SEAL Team, there's a lot of friends of mine working on that show. And it's been about the most accurate portrayal, I think, to date of what the life is like and the stress they're under and tying in with the family. A show Max Martini was on, too, was The Unit a while back, too. Also a pretty good show. I don't know if you've seen that one or not either. But yeah, I mean, I kind of embrace it. It's, you know, obviously I'm in the Hollywood business as well. So you know, but you know, I think that it attracts the top guys into the program. It just gets that awareness out there. Kids at a young age learn about the SEAL teams, and then, you know, getting the word out there gives the best guys in the front door, and then ends up getting the best product, you know, out in the war zone as well.
Yeah, very cool. Are there any, like, has there ever been like a most difficult stunt, or ever a most difficult scene or project that you've worked on that you found particularly challenging during your career?
It's not really that so much that. It's like I do train. The bulk of what I do is I train actors, and so some of them, you know, I remember I just saw an actor from the UK who's never even seen a gun in his life. You know, they're not even allowed to have guns. So and the way we train, if they want to be trained by SEALs, I mean, it's live fire, so high risk training. We're not just shooting blanks or anything like that too. So sometimes it is challenging taking somebody that's extremely fearful of the gun, and within a few days you got to get them up to the point where they're shooting, they're moving and communicating. So just the accelerated pace of that, and the fact that we are doing live fire, it is challenging, and you got to be really intentional on basically what you teach and the content that you feel is important.
Yeah, and you know, obviously, you know, guns are always a hot button issue in the political world and all that stuff, but it's been a big part of your life. When did you first introduce guns to your kids, or when is a good time to introduce kids to guns and teaching them about gun safety?
Yeah, as far as gun safety, I don't think there is too young you can start, but I'm also different than most SEALs I think you probably interviewed. So far, my kids have not fired a live weapon yet, but they have airsoft guns. I start training with them. I remember when I was training for the agency on their screening selections back in 2009. So my kids were only like, you know, yay big at the time, but they were training with me. They had the airsoft guns, and we were doing the rundowns, running with guns out in the street. A lot of complaints from the neighbors. You know? But, you know, you put the safety gear on, put their mask on. And then I also have a CERT gun. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but basically it's a full weight Glock, but it doesn't fire anything. And what it does is it shoots an invisible laser, and then on a computer screen, you can check your accuracy. So I've got them training on that as well. And the same thing, treat every gun like it's a live weapon. So I'm taking a lot of time to basically teach them in a low risk scenario. And when I feel that they're taking it serious enough, then we'll go to the range and start doing live fire. But I'm not in a rush to do that. I'm not the type, you know, we're not out in the country. We're not hunters or anything. So there's no real reason for me to push them into it at an early age, other than them understanding the safety. You know, they know how a gun works. They know not, if they see one out there, not to touch it. And I keep close eye on that. And when they do play around with their CERT gun or their airsoft, you know, if they sweep somebody with that gun, man, there's consequences. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. And Joost, does being a dad, does that have any effect on which particular movies that you'll choose to work on? Is there things you'll turn down because you don't like the way it would represent yourself or something like that for your kids to see?
I remember I've only turned down one job so far, and it was for a commercial. I'm laughing because I should have taken it, but I was chicken shit. But it was a commercial for myself and a gay partner for some kind of adoption agency. It's like, and I just didn't have the balls to say yes. If the money was up there, maybe I would have. But I'm just like, what kind of shit I'm gonna take if I take this job? No, but other than that, man, it's like I love all the projects I've been involved with. The American Assassin. When I read the script on that, it seemed very similar to my story of losing my wife at a young age and then joining the SEAL teams, and there was enough correlation there that getting to work with Dylan O'Brien, who was the lead on that movie too, and telling them my story, it kind of bonded us pretty close. So.
Yeah, very cool. And what do you got as far as plans or goals for yourself here for the future?
Man, I'm big into trying business. So I've got two small businesses. I have a window business and then a hard money lending business. And I'm into investing. I'm invested into a supplement company and also into a THC CBD company as well, like as a startup. So I really enjoy that part of it too. I'm big into learning about cryptocurrency. And that's another thing, teaching my kids financial stuff is a big priority. So every Saturday night we do like a good 90-minute lesson, and we watch shows like Shark Tank, and and we pause it, and it's like, well, give me the valuation on this company, and they have to do the math on that in their head. And I want them to have an entrepreneurial education and spirit and desire. So it starts at a young age. And it's the same with, I don't give them an allowance. They get money from me if they read a book, something like even Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You read the book, so you do an oral report and a written report, and then I give you money for doing that. So they don't get money for chores or any of that. It's only for education that they get money for. And I pay them in crypto as well, because they have to learn how to manage crypto, because that's the future. And most adults know very little about crypto, but that's going to be very common in a few years. So I want them to get ahead of the game to understand it. We run mining operations, and that's part of their job here, is to maintain the miners and look for the hash rate, and and just be there, be the eyes and ears for that when I'm out and gone and things like that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's incredible about the technology is that we have access to so many of these things now too. Like you can learn so much about it that you're not learning in school. Basically, like they're not teaching you about crypto or anything like that, or how to handle money, how to set goals, how to do anything like that in school. And I did the same with my oldest. I gave him The Richest Man in Babylon to read to try to get that sense of what to do with a dollar and something like that. So. I agree with you there. All right, last thing I want to hit you with here, Joost, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for the new dad or for the about-to-be father who's out there listening?
Good question. So society will tell you to be a good father, remove all hardship from your kids. But I think that's the worst thing you can do for them. My job is to love them and prepare them for the future. So what I do is I introduce hardships to them. For an example, one of the things we were doing as a family was hiking the Pacific Crest Trail with a goal of by the time they graduate high school, we finish. So I remember the first trip we did, we've done 10 trips along already. It was a 3-day trip. It was supposed to be sunny. It ended up raining the whole time. We didn't have the right gear. We had too much weight in the rucksacks. And the whole last day, they were miserable and cold. But they toughed it out. And I remember they went back to school and they told all their friends and teachers they were so proud of what they accomplished. And now keep in mind, we do a lot of fun stuff with them. The weekend before we went wakeboarding and all that kind of stuff. And they're not very proud of that. That's easy, but they're proud of the hardship. So I try to introduce hardship. I mean, with the economy now and everything like that, hardship is coming whether we like it or not. Another thing is your kids are not small versions of you. That was a mistake. I assumed that my boys are going to be just like me, but they're individuals, which I'm sure you've discovered by now. And they're a combination of their mother and myself, but they're also somebody that's neither their mother or themselves. They're their own people, and the kids are very different. So recognizing that, and then also getting behind their passions and dreams. And the last thing I will say too is don't protect your kids from life. When as a family or me as a father, when I'm going through hardships, when I'm having a tough time, let them see that. Don't protect them from everything. And because I don't think you're doing them a service by making everything seem like so easy as an adult. Because when they reach adulthood, then they're going to have this fantasy that, oh, life's going to be great now. So they see when we have our ups and downs, and right now our family's kind of going through another hardship. And so, but they're living it with us and experiencing it and seeing our pain and seeing how we deal with it. And they're judging us based on that, and they're kind of building their foundation based on watching you.
Incredible. Yeah, I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Joost Janssen, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time on First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, Alec. It was a good time.